Welcome, everyone. You are listening to Get Out of Your Own Way with me, April Yee, on Transformation Talk Radio. Get out of your way and get what you want through transformative self-care. I'm here to support you in getting out of your own way. So, what does getting in your own way look like? Well, how about letting other people define your value and worth, ignoring your body by not taking care of yourself, and people-pleasing? These are just a few ways I've gotten in my own way. In this show, I'll share new perspectives on self-care practices so you can discover options and choices for expanding what's possible for you and your life. In each episode, I have questions for you, and when you take the time to answer them, they'll help in building up your belief about yourself. I believe that when we get good with ourselves, we get good with our lives and the world. Get Out of Your Own Way starts now. Hi, everyone. I'm April Yee, and you are listening to Get Out of Your Own Way on Transformation Talk Radio, episode 9. The concepts I talk about in each episode are things I wish I learned sooner to support myself and get out of my own way. So I hope these ideas are coming to you when you need them. So today we'll be talking about decision making and how we get in our own way sometimes when it comes to this. So why do we find ourselves avoiding making decisions and instead stay confused or indecisive about them? I want to share this quote that I found on decision making, and I thought it was pretty relevant. It's by someone named Yama Mubteker, and I've never heard of this person, but I thought the quote was really powerful, so I'll just share it. Decision making is power. Most people don't have the guts to make a tough decision because they want to make the right decision, and so they make no decision. Remember, life is short, so do things that matter the most and have the courage to make tough decisions and to chase your dreams. So does that resonate with you? It resonates for me and how I've engaged with decision making in the past, especially the no decision part. And we'll be talking about right and wrong decisions in a minute, but I want to introduce this topic of decision making by talking about the difference between wanting to do something and deciding to do something, especially when it comes to making healthy changes in our lives. We can ask ourselves, am I wanting to make these changes or am I deciding to make these changes? And so what's the difference? It's not just semantics. So the way I like to think about it is that wanting to make changes is more like being interested in making the changes. When we want something, we have a desire or a wish for something, and it might seem like a good idea, but it doesn't require any action to want something or be interested in something. But when we decide to do something, it requires us to follow through on a course of action. So deciding is saying, okay, I'm going to do X, instead of just saying, I want to do X. I'm going to do X is a pretty firm commitment, and commitment requires action. So how do you know if you just want to versus knowing that you're deciding to? If you have some ideas of changes that you'd like to make in your life, think about each thing and see how it lines up with the want to or decide to thoughts that I'll give as examples. So with want to thoughts, you allow things to get in the way of your goals. So let's say your goal is to exercise every day, but you think the thought, my boss gave me a tight deadline, so I can't go to the gym today. Or your goal is to meditate every morning, but you tell yourself, I'm too tired to meditate this morning. Or your goal is to run 4 times a week, but you tell yourself, it's too cold to go for a run today. Or your goal is to eat less sugar, but you think the thought, I deserve to have this sweet treat because my day was so stressful. You could have a goal to spend less, but you think, I just finished this big project, so I'm treating myself to a special purchase. Or even just the thoughts, I don't feel like it today, or this is too hard. And these types of thoughts can easily get in the way of wanting to do something. But what happens when we decide to do something? And these are thoughts. And this is what thoughts sound like when you decide to, and your goal is your priority. So the thought would be, I'm going to do this today, no matter what. This is worth it, even if it's hard sometimes. I can do hard things. I'm choosing to make this a priority for me today. Even though it's cold out, I'm still going to do it today. This is important to me, so I'm going to stick with my plan. So, can you see the difference between want to thoughts or excuses and decide to thoughts, which come with actions that follow? And so, when you think about new or different results that you want to create for yourself, are you ready to decide what you'll do to make changes in your life? And what would happen if you don't make the changes you say you want to make? And what would happen and who would you become if you did make the changes you want to make by deciding that you will? So that's the difference between the idea of wanting to do something and deciding to do something. All right. So let's get back to why we sometimes choose to stay confused or indecisive instead of making a decision more efficiently. So, have you ever needed to make a decision about something, but you allowed yourself to be indecisive about it instead? And even perhaps for a long time? So, why do we do this? The quick answer is for perceived safety. And I've mentioned before that our brains have evolved for survival, and that means to keep us safe. And I'll come back to this in a minute. And really, when we make a decision, it happens in a moment. Even after you've deliberated about it for weeks, the decision itself actually just happens in a quick moment. You decide. It's no different if you decide in 10 seconds or in 2 months after deliberating. When you make that decision, it happens in a moment. But what is different is the time we take thinking about the decision instead of making the decision. And this could look like overanalyzing the pros and cons, asking other people for their opinion more than once, doing more research, switching back and forth between one decision and another, and procrastinating on taking action. And we might be worried about whether it's the right or wrong choice. So we let ourselves stay in the space of, I don't know, or I'm not sure. And our brains want to keep us safe, and staying in the place of, I don't know, or I'm not sure is one way it does this. Because when we keep telling ourselves, I don't know, or I need more information, or how will I know this is the right choice, we block ourselves from deciding, because deciding can be scary. And so our brain, in its survival evolution, wants to keep us safe, because deciding means we will have to take action. Deciding means stepping into the unknown. Deciding means we could potentially fail. Deciding means we possibly might have a difficult conversation that's needed. Deciding means we may have to take on more responsibility, or deciding means we may be successful beyond our wildest dreams. And all of that can feel scary. And all of that will also help us grow if we're willing to see our decision as an opportunity for growth. And if we're willing to learn what there is to learn from this choice, even if it ends up being the quote unquote wrong choice, then we will we will take and make decisions in a different way. And personally, I don't believe in wrong choices. I think that when we find out we want to do something, and or when we make a decision about something we want to do, and it ends up not being something that we thought it was, like that's just an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves, to gather more data for about ourselves and the world, and we can always change our mind. And also, a lot of our energy goes into being undecided. So our brains keep going over and over the options, the pros and the cons, the potential outcomes, the worst case scenarios, all of that. And sometimes for hours or days or weeks, even months, sometimes years, about the same decision. And that's a lot of brain space that could be used for more productive means, like creating the life we actually want. But instead, we think and think without creating forward momentum from all that thinking. And one thing that is powerful when making decisions is to like our reasons. So, are we making this decision because it's the easy choice where we don't have to stretch or expand ourselves? Are we making this choice from a place of self love or self sabotage? And when we like our decisions, or when we like our reasons for our decision, there is liberation in deciding. And we won't know what will happen until we decide and take the next steps. And I think that a lot of the times we're making up stories about what could happen. And those stories can make us feel stuck and and have us get in our own way. But we actually won't know until we decide and take the next steps. But because we think there is a right decision and a wrong decision, we don't decide and instead stay in confusion and indecisiveness. So, after I've shared some of these ideas, do you believe there is a wrong decision and a right decision? If you do, and if you spend a lot of time thinking about this, you probably also spend a lot of time in the miserable maybe. So, what is the miserable maybe? When we're stuck in the miserable maybe, we're choosing not to choose because then we won't have to take scary actions or do hard things. However, like I mentioned, our indecision weighs on us and it can exhaust us and create overwhelm for us. And sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed in our lives, there's a decision that we're not making. And that unmade decision takes up space in our brains and can really suck our mental energy away from us. And this unmade decision may be hanging over our heads for days or weeks. It stays in the background, and we're likely spending mental energy on it, even when we're not focusing on it directly. It's still there. And when we have an unmade decision, or even multiple ones in our minds, we may not be able to focus on our work. We may not be able to focus on our family or what we're doing because we're spending so much mental energy not deciding about something important or even something small. And when we keep going over why we want to do something and why we shouldn't do something, the pros and cons, the analysis paralysis that happens when we overanalyze and stay stuck where we are, when we know we want to have things change. And that's part of the energy suck and the mental exhaustion that can come from having an unmade decision. So the miserable maybe is neither saying yes or saying no. And I want to offer that when you say no, even if it's a no, you've made a strong decision about something and you can stop thinking about it after you make that decision, especially if you like your reasons for making that decision. And I'll talk a little bit more about liking your reasons. So, like I mentioned before, Do you like that you're making a decision based on the fact that it might be the easy choice versus the harder choice? If you do, and that helps you to make your decision, then that's great. Some people choose the easy thing at some points in their lives versus the harder thing. And some people at different points in their lives would choose the harder thing because they do want to grow and they do want to stretch themselves. And they like that they're choosing the harder thing. And so that helps them make their decision. So, would you like your reason if it's based on fear and that's how you make your decision? Or would you like your reason better if it was curiosity based or possibility based? And that's how you make your decision. And, you can think, is the worst case scenario worth the risk of the best case scenario? I think that's a really powerful way to think about it. Because if we're willing to have the worst case come true or be our reality, then we're actually willing to open ourselves to the best case scenario because we don't know if the worst case or the best case will happen until we make that decision. And if the best case happens, then that was at the risk of the worst case happening. And another question I like to ask is if you could be happy and successful either way, which one would you choose? And so I think it's important to recognize when your brain is keeping you safe by being stuck in, I don't know, or I'm not sure. And would you be open to just deciding instead and to like your reasons for your decision and to have your own back no matter what? And I'll be talking about having your own back no matter what in a minute. And also consider, will this choice move you towards an inspiring future or will it keep you stuck in the past? And again, what's the worst case scenario if you make the decision you want to make? And how will you know you'll be able to survive it? And more important, there's a way to not feel regret about a decision. Usually it's the case that we regret something that we didn't do instead of something that we did do. And for me personally, I used to have two regrets in my life. One was buying a timeshare, and the other was not having engaged in an activity with someone in my past. And I no longer regret the timeshare because I was able to offload it, but I still kind of regret not having done the activity with someone because I missed an opportunity to have that experience with them. But I did like my reason at the time for choosing to opt out. So, how do you not feel regret about a decision you make? And what does it mean to have our own back no matter what? So, I've talked about this before. Our model, which is a self awareness tool, has 5 components: circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. And the way we think about our circumstances creates our feelings, and our feelings fuel our actions, and our actions or inactions create the results that we have in our lives. And usually the results we get provide evidence for the thoughts that we're thinking. So if we want to have different results in our lives, we need to start thinking different thoughts. And so regret is a feeling, and feelings come from our thoughts. So if we think thoughts that create the feeling of regret, we'll feel regret about the decisions we make. And how we don't feel regret is that we have our own back no matter what the outcome is from the decision we make. And we're the only ones who usually beat ourselves up for making the quote unquote wrong decision. And we usually think other people will judge us in similar ways. And, they may or may not judge us, but it's all about what we make it mean about ourselves anyway. And so it's our thoughts about the circumstances. So if we think, I really messed that up, or I can't believe I did that, or what a terrible outcome, or something like this always happens to me, that's beating ourselves up and we'll likely feel regret when we think those types of thoughts about a decision we make. But instead, having our own back sounds like this. Okay, that didn't turn out well, but I wouldn't have known unless I made the decision. I'll figure it out moving forward. Or, wow, that wasn't what I expected. And now I know what not to do. Or, I'm disappointed it turned out this way, and I'm going to keep trying different ways until it works the way I want it to. Or, I don't like it here, and now I know I'm going to change my mind and go back. And lastly, something like, this isn't working for me. I get to change my mind about it, even if I spent some money trying it out. This happens a lot. I see this happening a lot with like doctors or lawyers who, at one point, maybe in medical school, like they got into a medical school or a law school that they wanted to get into, and they're finding out that they actually really don't want to study medicine or the law any longer. And, they can be thinking about the sunk cost of their time that they've already spent or the money that they've already invested. And this gets even deeper when that person actually becomes a lawyer or becomes a doctor. And then they realize that they, no longer want to be in their profession. And a lot of people will stay in that profession because they're like, oh, well, I already spent so much time and money like getting here. And now I just have to stay here, even though I'm miserable. And so it takes a lot of courage to change your mind about that. But it's like, would you rather suffer for other people's perceptions of you or what you think other people might think about you for leaving that profession? Or would you rather have courage and choose to disappoint other people, but not disappoint yourself, and choose what actually makes you feel happy and fulfilled in life, even if it means that you're, leaving behind the time and the money that you've already invested in something? So, my message to you today is that we can get out of our own way by choosing to make decisions without staying in the miserable maybe for quite so long or worrying about whether it's the right or wrong decision. And instead, just knowing that we'll gather more information after making the decision. We can save ourselves a lot of mental energy and going back and forth when we're able to make a decision quickly and move on and take whatever actions come next. And knowing that we'll have our own back no matter what happens. I'm so glad you joined me for this episode of Get Out of Your Own Way. To go even deeper, join me for Self-Care Sundays, monthly drop-in sessions, and you can find out more at thehealingmodalities.com. You can also sign up for my weekly Self-Care Seeds newsletter there. And join me again for Get Out of Your Own Way every other Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, and 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. Next time on Get Out of Your Own Way, I'll be talking about the stories we tell ourselves about facts that happen and how we can get in our own way by telling ourselves these stories. For example, what stories do you make up about someone who doesn't text you back right away? For some people, the story might be, uh-oh, she's mad at me for what I texted her. Or he must not like me. Or she doesn't care about me like I care about her. When in reality, we don't know what's happening on the other end of that text exchange. And I remember reading someone or somewhere in someone's book that the author made up this whole story about why her friend hadn't texted her back for a couple days. And, she was like saying that, oh my God, we're not friends anymore. She hates me. She's really mad at me. This relationship is over. But it was actually because her friend had dropped her phone in the toilet during their text exchange and had to get a new phone. But that whole time, the author was making up a terrible story about how her friend, was mad at her and no longer wanted to be friends. So that is really interesting to think about. In the meantime, where in your life do you make up stories based on facts that you worry over and ruminate about when you don't even know if they're true or not? Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Get Out of Your Own Way. Get out of your way and get what you want through transformative self-care with me, April Yee. Tune in every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. In each episode, I present new questions that support you in building up your beliefs about yourself. To connect with me or for more information, you can email me at thehealingmodalities@gmail.com or visit my website, thehealingmodalities.com. See you soon.